Hello dear tea friends from around the world, and sorry for this little technical problem. I had to switch back to Facebook Live because of not having enough subscribers on YouTube. Yes, I need 1,000 subscribers to be able to do a YouTube Live. So next time or just right after the show, please go on my YouTube channel and subscribe so that I can also make a live on YouTube. This is now not possible on YouTube. I have to do it so back on Facebook Live. Well, no problem. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining already. Good that you switched to this channel back. Okay, no problem. It's just a different tube, and people will still be able to watch this show later on. I'm sorry I've put them in the wrong direction, and but they can follow it later on. So let's not waste more time and jump into our subject of the day, Wenshan Baozhong. Wenshan Baozhong is one of the oldest teas in Taiwan, and I'm going to tell you all about its story. And now this gives me the opportunity. I think a couple of lessons back I was talking about John Dodd, one of the foreign agent in Taiwan who was doing a lot of business with tea, and with him was a Chinese who was working, Li Chunsheng, from Xiamen, from Fujian, born in 1838, and Christianed, baptized when he was 14. That's why his name Chunsheng, spring-born, sounds a bit evangelical, because his father was Christian already, and he became rich through the business of tea in Taiwan, and also a benefactor, and even had a church built in Guidejie in Dadaocheng, now in Old Taipei, and this church is still standing. It's a very small church in a very small street, but it's a street parallel to the river where the tea would be shipped from around Taipei, and where the tea would be processed before being exported for further processing in Xiamen or directly to foreign markets. Now, Li Chunsheng is after Dodd, maybe another very important figure in the Taiwanese tea industry, and he's often considered the father of Taiwanese teas. He was mainly a businessman, and because he sensed that tea was a hot commodity when he was working, he trained lots of farmers to plant tea, and also giving them a high price for the leaves. They were very motivated to grow more and more. And Li Chunsheng is also the very first one who exported tea from Taiwan to the United States, to New York. That was in 1869. Now, that tea, you could say, well, would be Baozhong already. It would roughly be tea that was inspired by Fujian and the oolong tea in the Ui Mountains. So here one little sample, and this is then the oolong, the black dragon. But in 1869, it was not yet called Baozhong. At that time, it was still only exported as Taiwan or Formosa oolong. So when did Baozhong really start. Now the name was invented in 1881 by a company called Yuanlong and Mr. Wu, who came from Fujian, also from Tong'an district. But really the very first people who settled and grew Baozhong were Wang Shijin and Wei Jin from Fujian Anxi, and they had their plantation in the Nankang mountains near Taipei. So this was in 1885. So 16 years after Li Chunsheng first exported tea to the United States. Now the tea was basically the same. The difference is the name Baozhong actually comes from the way it is wrapped. Now many teas have lots of inspiration for their names. Now some come from animal or an imaginary animal, like the oolong, the black dragon. You have names that come from flowers like shuexian, a spice, zhougui. Sometimes it can be your relatives, like Wu Zhenduo, who gave Cui and Jinxuan the name of his grandmother and mother to Cui and Jinxuan. You have sometimes a town, Pu'er. What else? Let me check. Or seasons like Sujichun, or also some poetic way of looking at seasons and animals like a Bilochun, the jade snail spring. So here it's a combination of the season and of an animal and also of a stone. But I think that Baozhong is the only tea where the name comes from the way that it's packaged. You could say in Pu'er you have a bing, a cake, or a zhuan, a brick, but you say a Pu'er cake or a Pu'er bing. So the name is still the Pu'er, and then the description, how it is pressed, is then the bing or the cake. Because you also find cakes now for white tea or for other teas. Red tea also was pressed at the time. So that it's pressed in a certain shape doesn't mean that it is Pu'er. But Baozhong, the fact that it is wrapped in a certain way, is the name for this tea. Now, originally, this Baozhong wrapping used a paper of 38.5 times 35.5 centimeters. And it would contain Seliang, that is a quarter of a gin, that is 150 grams. Now, I don't have such an old original packaging of Baozhong. It would be pretty large, but I found in a gift from a friend a tea packaged in paper. Now this is a mini size, a much smaller size. It must be maybe 10 or 15 grams. Baozhong, would be shaped more like in that kind of size. For 150 grams, they still keep it's the same weight as the original, and it would also be long. And you can see also this one is shaped not square but long, and it is made simply with paper. Now we can. So it's I'm opening it. So it would be the similar idea, but for a much larger amount of leaves. So you see they take it on the not like this, but like this, to have more space, and then they make it as a rectangle, and the tea wrapped in the middle. Baozhong means wrapped in the middle. Now this is a Shuexian, highly oxidized tea, oolong. And so Baozhong would have looked like this, wrapped like this, but with a larger piece of paper, 35.5 times 38.5. So this is a tea that originates in northern Taiwan, and it was so successful that it was planted all around northern Taiwan, Linkou, Taoyuan, Sanxia, Taipei, all around Taipei. What are the current suburbs or New Taipei City was full of tea plantations, and Sheding, Muja, and also later on Pinglins. Because what happened is, as Taipei grew, became a very big city, the tea fields gave way to the expansion of the city, and now most of the Baozhong plantations are located in Pinglin, which is somehow between Taipei and Ilan on the east coast. And the advantage of this location is that it's quite protected, because it's close to a water reservoir that is the source of water for the southern part of Taipei. And to keep this water clean, they don't allow any industry to settle there. But of course, in the 19th century, when tea was started, there was no industry at all in Taiwan. The major exports were tea and also some camphor, and also large rice production. Okay, I start to have a dry mouth. I want to drink some Wenshan Baozhong. So let's preheat the water. Get some more leaves out of my jar. Okay, I'll put this jar on the side so that you can better see how I'm brewing. Now, a lot of information for this class was researched thanks to T. Parker and his book, Baozhong Cha. I remember that recently he spoke about it. He said that's probably his the book for which he put the most work in. A lot of interesting historical facts, and it's at the same time the book that sold the least copies, because in Taiwan everybody knows about Baozhong, and nobody feels very excited about Baozhong anymore. Other teas have gained much more popularity, like Dongding Oolong and High Mountain Oolong or Pu'er, and Baozhong, that's has been, but actually because it's such an old tea in Taiwan, so it dates back to 1881 for the creation of the name, that it's actually interesting to research and to learn more about it. And the fact also that it's such an old name and an old tea also means that there has been a lot of experiments with this tea. There are a lot of different cultivars that have been tried with this, and this is something I also need to clarify about its name. So, as I said, it's a way of wrapping that gives the name to the tea. So it has nothing to do with the cultivar. So that's one thing to bear in mind, that unlike a tea that uses a cultivar name for its name, like a Sujichu, not Tsueyu, Qingxing Oolong, Dapang Oolong, Xuexian, Zhougui. This tea, since it's not defined by the cultivar but by the wrapping, it can actually use any type of leaf inside to make it. The only restriction is that it has to be processed in a certain way under the category of oolong. So partially oxidized. If it's not partially oxidized, then it cannot be considered as a Baozhong. You could wrap green tea or red tea the way that Baozhong is wrapped, but it would not be Baozhong. But another very important Baozhong at that time was Huacha Baozhong, that is flower-scented Baozhong. In the end of the 19th century, Taiwan actually produced a lot of flower-scented tea, and these teas were a very big hit in Southeast Asia. So lots of flower-scented Baozhong was exported to Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, these places where a lot of Chinese live and who like teas that are very refreshing. Whereas the unroasted, not the unroasted, the unscented Baozhongs, they were more for the Western markets. So for the flowers, they would use all kinds of flowers, not just jasmine, but ylang, roses, osmanthus, all the flowers you can think of, they would use to scent the Baozhong. Hot temperature is really important. Okay, since the leaves are not rolled but are just twisted, they don't take too much time to release their fragrances. So let's empty the cups rather quickly and monitor the color of the brew changing. Oh, by the way, the Baozhong I'm brewing is my most typical, most representative Baozhong is this subtropical forest Baozhong for my selection. See, it has a very nice light green color. A bit of buttery notes and lots of flower fragrances. It's very light, very elegant, and no bitterness. Very, very nice. So, where were we at? Baozhong. The process of Baozhong is also a bit different from oolong. Actually, it's a bit simpler. You have the harvest, of course. Then, like for oolong, you have outdoor and then indoor withering, kind of letting the leaves evaporate their water. Then sometimes if it's a bit rainy, they only do indoor withering. And then a bit like oolong, it will also go through a period of a bit of bruising. Indoors on wax, sometimes a bit turned around. But then instead of, then there's some lonian, but then instead of rolling the leaves to make them, to turn them into balls, they simply do the firing and drying. So to stop the oxidation and then a drying or even stronger roasting to dry the leaves even further, for especially in the past. Now this drying is more and more kept to a minimum in order to keep these very fresh fragrances. Also you can imagine when it was wrapped in paper, the freshness would go away faster than nowadays when it's wrapped into plastic and it can be vacuum sealed. So here the freshness is much better preserved. In the past, it had to be roasted quite strongly because it was only wrapped in paper for reasons of convenience. It was paper was the cheap material of its time before plastic was invented. Okay, let's see some more. So Baozhong can be actually made with all kinds of cultivars. So you have to always be careful when you are looking at something called Wenshan Baozhong, because the quality of that Baozhong will also greatly depend on the quality of the leaves, and this quality comes mostly from the cultivar. Sujichun and Tsueyu, for instance, have much larger yields, and therefore they are very often much cheaper than Baozhongs made from Qingxing Oolong, which is now the preferred cultivar for high-grade Baozhongs. But what is, and maybe also now the most typical one that really catches also the sense of the Wenshan area, the terroir, which are subtropical forests. The hills are not very high. They are, as I said, between Taipei and Ilan, so in the north of Taiwan, where it's sunny, but it can be more cloudy than in the south of Taiwan. Compared to, it's also more cloudy than Alishan or Shaninshi or Lishan. Of course, the temperature difference is not as large as in high mountain areas. So these Baozhongs have a bit declined in interest by the consumers because they don't have the energy of high mountain oolong, but they have a lot of finesse, a lot of flowery notes. They have a certain lightness that also makes them very nice, very interesting. And what makes them also interesting is that, as I mentioned, northern Taiwan, when the Wenshan area is the oldest place where tea was planted in Taiwan, and therefore you find much more different tea trees in the Wenshan area than in high mountains. Over there in high mountains, it's like 99% Qingxing oolong, but in Wenshan area you find Qilan, Fosho, Zhougui, Xuexian, all kinds of different cultivars, of course, Cuiyu, Jinchuan, Sujichun also. These are also the popular ones, but old Gamajong, very old names, Maoho, that sometimes are only spoken in Taiwanese. So there's a much more bigger diversity of Baozhongs than of high mountain oolongs, for instance. For if you want to have diversity in high mountain oolong, you have to have a diversity more in mountains. It's interesting to compare different mountains, but in the Wenshan area, actually, from one plantation to another, if it's a different cultivar, you can also have a lot of variety, a lot of diversity in tea produced. Okay, let's make some more. It's still very sweet, very nice. The leaves are open. You see, I did not use a whole Gaiwan so that I can brew a bit more relaxed. I don't have to be so quick to empty my Gaiwan, but basically they are holding well. And also Qingxing Oolong is a bit more powerful, more concentrated type of leaf, which is smaller than Jinchuan, for instance. So it does not. You don't need too many leaves for this, especially if you want to drink it a bit light. And I feel that lightness is one of really the characteristics of Wenshan Baozhong. And at the same time, it some kind of woody notes of forest notes appear faster than in high mountain oolongs. So the terroir and the fact that it is not rolled has a large impact on the notes, on the aromas. Okay, it doesn't have to brew too long, since it's only the second brew. Okay, again, very nice. Now I'm using a Gaiwan, and a Gaiwan is actually a vessel that Tipak also recommends in his book for Baozhong. The fact that porcelain will decrease in temperature faster than Yixing teapot, for instance, accentuates more the aromas and the lightness of the tea. So it's really actually a good instrument for such a light and fragrant, lightly oxidized oolong, like Baozhong. Especially when the quality is so high that there is no bitterness or sourness from the leaves. It does not need to be let's say filtered or wounded by Yixing clay, which would always retain a little bit of fragrances, unless you use Juni. Juni would be a possible alternative if you want to use an Yixing teapot. But the porcelain actually does a very good job in getting all these light frequencies in the cup. Very nice. It's a nice change of pace if you don't want something that is too powerful compared to a high mountain oolong, which has the energy from the sun and the mountain and the new plantation. Because the drawback of Baozhong in Wenshan area is that most of the plantations have been around for a long time. So the soils are kind of a little bit depleted. Sometimes they rest now. Sometimes they are a bit abandoned because business has not been so good. So that's how I am sometimes able to get some semi-wild Baozhong, or they go more in the direction of doing organic Baozhong by preserving more the soil also, because they have in the past a bit overexploited the soils. And but yeah, on the other hand, a soil that now is grown intended more in an organic way does give very mild notes because it also takes a bit of time to gather new energy, and it won't be as powerful as in these extreme conditions as in the high mountains. But yeah, it's more subtropical, more temperate climate. And actually, when you look at Uitis, the best oolongs in the world, they are grown below 800 meters of elevation, so they are not high mountain oolongs, and they are still the best. And you can argue that Baozhong has kept the same shape as teas from Ui. The process is also much more similar. These are single leaves instead of being several leaves on a stem. Of course, and they are later on also sorted. That's why, unlike high mountain oolong, the tea, once it's processed, it's done within a day after the harvest. But Baozhong, you still need to wait sometimes up to a week or more that the tea leaves get sorted, that the stems get taken away. Or a lot of this is done by hand. sometimes also it need to be better dried, slightly roasted, because since they are not rolled, there's much more contact to the air. A leaf like this, as you can see, it has much more surface in contact with the air than a rolled high mountain oolong leaf. So it needs to be dried better than high mountain oolong, otherwise it will turn sour much more quickly and deteriorate. And therefore I really try to source my teas whether from a farmer, actually from people who roast the Baozhong, because then I've more. I know that these teas can be also kept a bit longer, and that by the time you drink your last Baozhong in at the bottom of your pack, it will still taste fresh and good, since it has been well roasted, well dried. And yeah, today we can see that the taste is lovely, very sweet and flowery, not so powerful, but yeah, much more like a pleasant violin in the background. It's not such a strong concerto, but quite mild, and also yeah, a nice change of pace. And since I was mentioning some music, I don't know if you can sometimes listen in the background. I'm playing le violoncelle baroque from Christophe Coin et l'ensemble baroque de Limoges. I like to give you some ideas of music you can listen to while you have tea in order to relax. And actually I chose this this music and this set of CDs because also the packaging. Sometimes the packaging is important in tea. So the packaging of Baozhong gives the name to this tea, and here the packaging of the CDs is very interesting because since this group comes from Limoges. Limoges in France is a place that makes porcelain, and so each CD has a picture of a painting with porcelain from the old times. I'll show you the different porcelain cups, porcelain teacups. So we have Bach, Graun, Telemann, and Boccherini. The one I'm listening to now is from Telemann, camera music, so chamber music, which is so very suitable for drinking tea at home in a room. Also here, and you find it at naive.france.fr, the producer of these musics. Yeah, music is like tea, a nice way of enjoying time you have on your own, and especially now in these times when you cannot go to concerts, you can continue to support musicians around the world through purchases of CDs, and yeah, that's why I also wanted to make this little clin d'oeil, this nod to music that I'm listening to while I'm drinking tea, and I know that lots of musicians follow me, and I hope that the others who are not musicians like me, we support them by purchasing their albums. Okay, I think I've covered most ground on Baozhong, about the history. It started in 1881. The way the name comes from the wrapping, the process of how it's done, a bit simpler than oolong without the rolling, but with a bit more roasting. Well, of course, roasting level can depend. Now people like their baozhongs with a very light roast, or almost no roast at all, just good drying. But there are also still some more roasted oolongs that are maybe more suitable for longer term storage, and that this tea comes from the northern part of Taiwan. Yeah, that's something I was surprised one day to see in a shop some baozhong made in Alishan. And the seller said, yeah, I don't have any contact in Wenshan anymore that I trust, but I have this, my main major partner in tea is from Alishan, so I asked him to make baozhong. But for me, this was complete nonsense, because of course then in his shop he was not selling it as Alishan baozhong, but as Wenshan baozhong. So it's always interesting for people in different areas to experiment and see how the process impacts the taste. But if you want to drink Wenshan Baozhong, actually I think it should come from Wenshan area and not from Alishan. So, well, but this is something that in tea, there's always experiments, copying, imitation, but if you want to learn about it, you have to stick to the real ones first to learn, and only later then branch out to find something special. Okay, and yeah, and there were flower baozhong and baozhong that is not scented, which is now the norm. The scented teas now in Taiwan, the only real scented tea left over is this jasmine scented green tea that I'm proposing also in my selection. But the scented baozhongs are a thing of the past. They have been overtaken by artificial scents. And yeah, that's it. So thank you again for watching, and see you next time. Maybe maybe I'll do it on Instagram to change and see if it works better than on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel, please subscribe so that you can reach over 1,000 people, and later on we can do a YouTube live video also. Thank you very much. Bye bye.